The beginning of the NBA free agency season is just days away. In fact, the free agency season begins on Sunday, and the biggest name being talked about in this free agency season is, of course, LeBron James. And why wouldn't he be talked about? It's been known ever since the season started that LeBron James would not be returning to Cleveland. In fact, today it was official that he opted out of his contract with the Cavaliers, and nobody saw this not coming. Everyone saw this coming, especially with the Cavs front office. Looked a little bit disorganized the last couple of seasons with the firing of a head coach, bringing in Tyronn Lue, and Kyrie Irving requesting a trade in the last offseason. The Cavaliers, I think they're going back into rebuilding mode. And I think that was a clue based on them drafting Colin Sexton in the NBA draft just this past week. And they're hoping that he becomes possibly the Kyrie Irving or LeBron James, depending on what they're trying to look at the start of the rebuilding process. So I think this is coming down to two teams. But first, let me just talk about all the teams that were in consideration. The most popular thing was him going to the Lakers. The Rockets were involved. Boston was kind of involved. San Antonio was kind of involved throughout the beginning. The 76ers were involved. But I think this is ultimately coming down to two teams. I think it's coming down to the Lakers, and it's coming down to the 76ers. I think those are the two teams that it's going to come down to. And there was reports that he could decide before July 4th. In fact, was that potentially a personal deadline for him? Or was that the NBA's personal deadline? I'm kind of starting to think that this whole him deciding before July 4th, I don't think that's his own personal deadline. I think that's the NBA's personal deadline. In fact, if he announces what he's going to do on July 4th, I honestly think that this is just the NBA's, their plea to try to get ratings and to get mentions on SportsCenter. Because SportsCenter needs something to talk about on July 4th. Because people aren't really going to watch SportsCenter on the 4th of July. Because there's not really any relevance to sports on the 4th of July, other than a couple of MLB games and the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest, mostly Joey Chestnut. But I think if they get a story on where LeBron James, the king, is going to go in 2018, I think it's basically going to be talked about for the entire duration of SportsCenter that night. I feel like they'll have their ratings complete. I think this could it be a potential thing between SportsCenter and the NBA? Because if you've noticed that on the 4th of July, there's been a history the last couple of years about big free agency signings on July 4th. Could we see it again? I think we're going to see it again. I think LeBron James will be deciding on exactly July 4th, probably around noon Eastern time. That's kind of my prediction here. Around noon Eastern time, maybe 11:30 Eastern time, I think we'll have the decision of LeBron James on July 4th at around noon Eastern time, around that lunch hour. So let's talk about the two teams I think it's coming down to. I think it's coming down to the Lakers, and it's coming down to the 76ers. With Lakers, I think he only wants to go to the Lakers if it's guaranteed that another All-Star is going to go with him. I think if there isn't an All-Star that goes to Los Angeles with him, I think he's out, and I think he's going to the 76ers. Especially with him deciding on July 4th, like I think he's going to. You have the first, the second, and the third to kind of see what's going to happen. Is Paul George going to go to the Lakers? Is Kawhi Leonard going to go to the Lakers? Could Chris Paul even go to the Lakers? I feel like Chris Paul could still be in the mix because the Rockets were originally in the mix for LeBron James. Could they still be in the mix? I highly doubt that because if LeBron James signs with the Rockets have to make all these big cuts to a lot of their key role players from last season. I don't think the Rockets want to take that risk. I think the Rockets should just focus on keeping Chris Paul in Houston to help out James Harden. So I think the Rockets are definitely out now. I think those first 3 days, it will dictate what LeBron will do. If there isn't, well, I think there was at least an article I read. I don't know where it was from. But he had texted Kevin Durant about possibly joining with the Lakers. So if you look at this, there's a possibility of maybe Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and LeBron James, or even Kevin Durant going to Los Angeles. And I feel like you need at least one for him to consider Los Angeles, and maybe two to definitely go to Los Angeles. So I think if Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are both there on the Lakers, I think LeBron James will be all in. Because that'll be that new big three. Like in Miami, he had the big three with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. And going back to Cleveland, he had a big three of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. So I think if there isn't a formation of a super team that will begin, I think LeBron James will be out. The 76ers. The 76ers are a young team that is on the rise. And if they had veteran leadership like LeBron James, they could win multiple championships. In fact, I said as soon as LeBron James leaves Cleveland or even retires from the league, I think it'll come down to Boston and Philadelphia for the Eastern Conference every single year. I think that's going to be a huge rivalry throughout the Eastern Conference for at least maybe the next 7 years at the very least, maybe even the next decade. So I think if the Philadelphia 76ers, I think they would embrace LeBron James. I think they'd welcome with open arms. Well, almost any team would welcome LeBron James with open arms. I think that 76ers core, they just need some veteran leadership, especially from LeBron James. Arguably one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Maybe not statistically, or maybe not championship-wise, but with LeBron's basketball IQ, they can really learn a lot from LeBron James. In fact, LeBron James is getting up there in age. I think he only has maybe about 3 or 4 more years. So this could be an opportunity to win some championships. And I think the 76ers are more stacked than the Cavs are. So I think it's coming out of those two teams, the Lakers or 76ers. I've thought from the beginning of this process, I really thought he would go to Philadelphia. I think that was the favorite for me. But right now, the favorite to the country is the Lakers. But I think we're just going to wait and see. I think it's down to those two teams. I think he's going to decide exactly on July 4th at around noon Eastern time. Now, there is a history of LeBron James announcing these moves around that second week of July. But I really think he'll decide on July 4th. Because there's a history of big free agent signings on July 4th. And this could be the biggest one ever. In fact, I think it will be the biggest one ever. If he decides on July 4th, I think it'll be the most memorable day. Especially if it's an announcement to the Lakers. I think it'll be the biggest memorable day in NBA free agency history. Maybe even NBA history. Anyway, comment your thoughts on where you think he's going to go. Like, subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends and family. I will see you next time.